let's talk about Notre Dame. One of the members of the Snaps production team, our guy Paul Farrington. Everybody should check out the Paul Farrington Show, an excellent podcast that Paulie Walnuts does. But he's a Notre Dame fan, and we're kind of talking before the show, and there's a lot of talk out there about whether or not Notre Dame should join a conference. Greg McElroy in a piece on his podcast saying there's no point in them joining a conference, and I'm inclined to agree. Because at the end of the day, like, what is the advantage? You want to join because you want to make more money, but what if you make just as much money independently and you don't have to worry about things like interconference positioning? Like, look at the politics of the SEC spring meeting. Okay. You don't have to be in those rooms. You don't have to deal with Mark Stoops stumping for 8 games and Nick Saban getting mad about his 3 permanent opponents and Greg Sankey trying to be like, come on, guys, let's do it. And Kirby Smart and saying, I don't care about any of it. Like, you don't even have to be in those rooms. All you have to worry about is keeping your house in order. And that seems infinitely more attractive than just like diving into the Big Ten and figuring out travel schedules and all these other sorts of just problems that you just don't have to deal with right now.
Well, you also don't have to play a 13th game. I think the more and more we get into this extended playoff, this 12-team playoff, the more irrelevant it is to play in a conference championship game. I think if anything, it benefits Notre Dame from not having to play in a conference championship game and still be in a position to be one of the 12 teams vying for the playoffs. There's 2 negatives. One negative is you can't get a bye. You know, the bye in the 12-team playoff is going to go to the top 4 conference champions. So you're never going to be able to get a bye.
Yeah, that's the biggest black and white negative to all of this.
Yes, the big negative. But when you're in a conference with USC, Michigan, Ohio State, how often are you going to get to be the conference champion of the Big Ten to realistically get that bye? And at the end of the day, essentially, once again, you're getting a bye. You get the championship weekend off. You don't have to play in a conference championship weekend. That is your bye.
True.
Like, yes, it's not a playoff game, but you still physically get a week off where you don't have to play a football game to prepare yourself both mentally and physically to get ready for the playoffs. So that is, I guess that's a trade-off there. The other difference is just money. That's the big difference. Right now, they're getting $25 million a year from NBC, another $10 million from the ACC. That contract ends after next year. Rumors are it's going to be more in the $70 million range from NBC. So if you're making 70 from NBC, you're making 10 from the ACC with their partial contract. The money difference is nothing. So to me, I'm with you. I'm with Greg. Money is not going to be different if you close the deal with NBC. Yeah. I don't really care about necessarily a bye if I'm going to somewhat get a bye without a conference game, not having to play a 13th game.
Didn't think about that.
And you keep the scheduling, you keep the games you want to keep, and you don't have to deal with the headache. So I'm not joining a conference. I'm not. If it's 8 at 4, you got to. But right now, they're in the driver's seat, man. Notre Dame is in a prime spot right now to have a great path to a 12-team playoff year in and year out.
Now, the only thing that I would say is that if I want to play devil's advocate, I don't even know if it's actually playing devil's advocate, but when you Google this, there's almost a surprising amount of misinformation about Notre Dame, where a lot of the articles act like they're only going to be making $22 million as the Big Ten is making $90 million, right? Not really acknowledging that there's a brand new deal in the works. Now I do agree if NBC is only wanting to go do 60 million. And then so with the ACC numbers, it puts you at 70. Okay. Well, the Big Ten's going to be making 90 at that point, 20 million a year. Maybe that's a gap where you're like, financially, we need to explore this. But then let's say I'm CBS or something. For Notre Dame to get that 90 million, I would have to add that to the TV deal. Right. And then you enter a weird space where it's like, okay, wait, if I'm the network executive, why would I add 90 million to this deal that I already have signed just to bring them in?
But what's the split up though? The difference is because right now the Big Ten is run by Fox, NBC, and CBS. It's not like
let's just do napkin math though. Let's just do all I'm saying is the core concept of if they join the Big Ten and you want them to get the 90 million that the other schools are getting, it requires an additional 90 million being generated. But if Notre Dame is telling you they will sign for 75, then why would anybody ever agree to give them the 90? I mean,
it depends on what the split is. It depends on what the split is at the end of the day. Like Fox or NBC and CBS, they're not all throwing down $90 million per team. That is split up over 3 networks, I'm sure, or whatever the Fox, I'm sure, pays the majority of it instead of the big boys in the conversation. But it's I think it's a
Yeah, and
deal
I guess
for.
you're
I
not going to
think
get
it's
some
a
sort of individual split deal. I see what you're saying. You're not going to get some sort of
no, yeah,
individual split deal for Notre Dame.
yes,
But then if you're NBC and you're like, well, if their market value represents this, then I'm kind of getting a deal at 75. So
wow,
Aaron, in the text, you put a kind of a cutoff of, okay, if you get 70 million for NBC, then that's
yep,
acceptable. Then you get your
yep.
10. And I think I'm
That's the
inclined to
number.
agree that you can make up for an 80 to 90 gap. 70 to 90 may be a bit too much. And if they do that, well, then you maintain all that wonderful independence that you've come to know and love so much. And there is value in that. And it makes
Yeah,
you very quick on your feet again, and you can kind of massage things as you want. You can create your own schedule as you want. You don't regionalize the brand, right? You remain a national
mm,
draw, because as soon as you enter a conference, you are kind of suddenly lumped in with that portion of the country's people. It's one of those fascinating effects that I want to see about USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten. Do we start thinking about the Big Ten like they represent the West Coast, or do we just start lumping USC and UCLA like they're in the North, like the
well,
kind of
I think a lot of that
middle
depends on
North?
what happens to the Pac-12. I think that a lot has to depend on what happens to the Pac-12.
Yeah,
The
yeah, true.
Pac-12 disappears, then yeah, you make like just say the Big Ten is the Midwest and the West Coast too, especially if they're able to get say Washington and Oregon as well. I mean, their footprints can be pretty damn massive at the end of the day. I also too, man, like you throw like Notre Dame is such its own brand and its own entity, and it's so big and powerful, and you always associate it with being independent. If you do throw it in there, I just think it loses a lot of value because then
Loses luster.
it's not because it's never gonna be to me ever as of right now. It won't be as powerful as Ohio State. It won't be as powerful as Michigan. It won't be as powerful as Alabama. It won't be as powerful as Georgia if it would join the SEC or the Big Ten. By it staying independent, that brand is still, like you allude to, it's massive, it's national. It's not necessarily competing against the Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas, Oklahomas of the world. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
And I think Notre Dame fans like that. And I don't blame them for it. I would too.
No, let's be clear about this again. They're not making shit right now compared to these other deals. 20-something million
No.
a year is awful. So it all hinges on, can you get this next deal? D. 36 says Notre Dame not having enough fundraising for money not to matter. It's one of those deals where I don't care how deep your pockets are. $70 million is $70 million. You just can't unless you are the Princeton endowment, you can't just drum up $70 million like
Yeah.
it means nothing to you. So no, like even though I know Notre Dame's pockets are deep and their alumni network is very wealthy, that's still a ton of money. And that's still a massive competitive disadvantage if that were to continue into the deep future, which is not. Also, their deal with Under Armour is about to be up, so they can re-sign that and make a ton of money. I think, if I was Notre Dame, again, the number would have to come in
Many
really
driver.
low for me to join a conference. Otherwise, I'm chilling. I'm happy with
Yep.
where I'm at.